Hello new friends and welcome back returning ones. Several months back, to celebrate the release of Haikyuu's 4th season, I put out this video here where I rated every player who had appeared in the anime up to the 3rd episode of season 4. The idea was to create a fantasy draft board where myself and anyone who wished to play along could put together their own fantasy team with the goal of hypothetically winning at the Miyagi prefectures and being at least in the mix at the national level. I built my own team on medium difficulty, following the rules that I had laid out in that video. The team was as follows. I had Toru Oikawa of Abajosai as my setter. My wing spikers were Kotaro Bokuto from Fukurodani, Tsutomu Goshiki from Shiratorizawa, and Kenji Fudakuchi, the smartass captain of Daitech. For my middle blockers, I selected Nekama's captain Tetsuru Kuro and Yutaro Kendaichi from Abajosai. Finally, rounding out the starters was the Libero, and here I picked another Nekama 3rd year, the backbone of their vaunted defense, Morisuke Iyaku. The team was overall pretty strong, and I felt confident that as a group they could make it to the nationals and stood a pretty good chance of taking down the whole tournament. In that video I also made a few promises that I am here to deliver on now. Firstly, I said that if the video got 2,000 views and 100 likes, I would continue to update the list and I would make a new team on the hardest difficulty rating. Well, to my absolute amazement, the video has, as of writing this, got over 10,000 views and over 350 likes, which is just incredible. Upon its initial release, the video kind of bombed. However, it was thanks to a bunch of people sharing it around that eventually it went on to take on a life of its own. And for that, I would like to thank all of you who have watched it. This video is that follow-up. The list has been updated. You can see it right now on the screen in front of you. You can check it out for yourself by clicking on the link in the description below. In addition to updating the list, I also added a few new rules to the hard difficulty setting to make it a little more challenging for those S-tier players out there. I will go into details on the new rules very shortly, but before we get into the updates, I'd like to humbly request that if you enjoyed the video and this concept, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and sharing. The success of the last one was entirely a result of so many of you out there sharing it on sites such as Reddit. This latest one would benefit greatly from folks doing the same. Just like the previous video, if we can get 2,000 views and 100 likes on this video, I will return at the end of the season to update the list once more. Now that that's out of the way, let me discuss some of the updates. So the most notable additions to the list this time around are the inclusions of 2 new teams, the national powerhouse Inurazaki High as well as Lesser Lights Tsubakihara Academy. In addition to these new schools, I also went through the list once more and updated some of the rankings of players who were on the list previously. This was because I felt I had either undervalued them as prospects in the previous video, or they had displayed substantial growth and progress throughout the first half of season 4. I can't go through them all, but some highlights include raising Hinata's value up to an 8.0 rating. I did this because his receives greatly improved during the training camp at Shiratorizawa Academy. His serves are still an issue, but overall his progress throughout the season is pretty undeniable. Moving upwards towards the top end of the list, here I bumped Kamomedai High's own tiny giant, Korai Hoshiyumi, up to a 9.5 rating. Personally, I found Hoshiyumi to be the most impressive new player we got to see so far this season, and thusly rewarded him with a score bump. In saying that, Hoshiyumi wasn't the only impressive new player we saw this season, and I'm sure many of the Inurazaki players will make big impacts in the second half of the season. So, as I stated previously for this video, I am going to be competing on hard mode. This is the highest level of difficulty that I have currently set on the board. For hard modes, the rule set is as follows. For your starting lineup, you can only choose one player from the same team, so no chance of getting both of the Mia twins, I'm afraid. Additionally, on hard mode, an opposite wing spiker has to be selected. This is particularly tricky as the number of players who naturally can play this position is actually pretty small, and getting an Ushijima is obviously eating into a considerable portion of the points budget. Finally, there is the budget itself. In the previous video, because I played on medium difficulty, I had 55 points to spend on my starters. Now that I have increased the difficulty rating, I only have 53.5 points, with an additional 5 points for the subs, which I have to use to acquire a total of 3 bench players, not just 1 or 2. A team's identity or philosophy has always been a key component of what makes each squad in this series feel so unique. In the last video, my team was built around the threat of monster serves coupled with both high intelligence and high consistency. This time around, I had to be more humble with my approach, so I decided to adopt a Nekama-style philosophy. The Nekama mindset of being so in sync with each other that as a collective they are analogous to a constantly flowing stream of blood, traveling steadily throughout the body. It's pretty cool, and I always loved that imagery. Personally, I love the idea of creating a team that, as a unit, is stronger than the sum of its parts. A team who are super reliable, as well as super consistent game to game. So this team is just that. I wanted high character players who always give it their best and leave it all out on the court, but who could also slot seamlessly and harmoniously into a squad that valued the team above all else. So while they might not be the most talented group from top to bottom, they would always show their tenacity on the court, to paraphrase Wakatani South's motto. So without further ado or any more to do, here is a team that I put together. Like the previous video, we are starting out at the setter position. The key quality or trait that I wanted from a setter on this team above all else was high intelligence and a cool, controlled personality. In such a key position, I required someone who could act as the proverbial brain of the team and direct the players around them by enabling each of them to perform at an elite level. Basically, they needed to get the absolute maximum out of their teammates as individuals. The obvious choice here is probably Kenma from Nekama. He literally ticks all the boxes required at this position. However, I went another direction. I actually chose the Fukurodani setter, Kaiji Akashi. The second year plays at an elite level and is already a key piece in one of the strongest teams in the country. While he might not be quite as sharp as Kenma, he is definitely one of the smartest players that we see in the series. He expertly manages to handle the mood swings of his team's mercurial ace, Bokudo, and I think in this team he would be a real asset to the player I have earmarked to captain this squad. He's also pretty tall, at about 6 feet, which all things considered is a real asset at the net, both offensively and then on defense, and that is why I went for him above Kenma. Moving on to the wing spikers, and a quick reminder, at the wing spiker position I need to select 2 outside hitters. Outside hitter using Karasuno as an example is the position that both Tanaka and Asahi play. Additionally, I needed to select an opposite hitter, which is basically a left side wing spiker, and this is where Daichi plays. So starting off on the outside first, my first wing spiker is the Aobajosai third year Takehiro Hanamaki. Maki is a pretty solid player all around. He makes a lot of clutch plays in the games we see Seijo play, especially on the defensive end, where he dug up some pretty crazy spikes, especially in Season 2. He is an auto-include on a very strong team like Aobajosai, follows the lead of both Iwa and Oikawa well, and has no real weaknesses. He also has a bit of height too, standing at a little over 6 feet tall. So while he may not be the most glamorous pick, I feel like he isn't a net negative at the position. For my second outside wing spiker, I am going to be selecting the Wakatani South ace Takeru Nakashima. Takeru is a real strong all-round player. He is exceptionally crafty, which is essential as he is pretty short comparatively to the other wing spikers that he is likely to match up against. In the game against Karasuno, he was very impressive on a number of fronts. He displayed great ball skills by changing the angle of his spikes, as well as ricocheting shots off the blocker's hands to score points. Defensively, he was also very strong and dug up a lot of spikes throughout the game. His leadership style is similar to Daichi's, but I feel like he has a higher upside offensively, as he can create a lot more on attack. And I think his humble, supportive leadership style complements both Akashi and my captain well. I'm also putting Takeru in as my ace, as I think he is the best option the team has on the offensive end. Finally, at the opposite hitter side, I have selected the Karasuno captain Daichi Sawamura. Daichi is also my selection as captain for this team. His leadership style is similar to Takeru's, both are agreeable, supportive, and lead by example. I figure they will work well together, and I don't really see ego being an issue with either of them. Daichi as a player might not offer much going forward, but on defense he is rock solid. I wrestled a long time with including him on the team because I really wanted to select Nishinoya as my libero, but in the end I decided that Daichi was the best that I realistically had available to me in this position. Moving on to the middle blockers, and first up is Takanobu Aone from Date Tech. He is the face of the Iron Wall, and standing at about 6'3", he certainly brings a great deal of height to the team. He is unnaturally quick for his position, and coupling that speed with his massive frame, he's a nightmare for opposing setters to deal with. I figure with so many strong defensive players supporting the middle block, Aone's presence in the middle will force the opposing setters into making riskier, wing-focused attacks. My back row players should have no trouble cleaning up many of these lower percentage shots. On top of which, in Season 4 he displayed a pretty impressive service game, which is a very dangerous new weapon in his arsenal going forward. For my second middle blocker, I went for another second year player. This time it is a middle blocker from Shiratorizawa Academy, Taichi Kawanishi. Taichi stands at 6'2" and is playing a starting role at a team which regularly competes at the national level. Like Maki at the wing spiker position, he isn't the most glamorous player on the team, but like Maki, he is a solid player. His size complements Aone well, as both are read blockers and should be able to implement that bunch shift defense which makes the Iron Wall so formidable. Finally, we have our last starter, the libero. I originally had planned to include Nishinoya at this position, but was unable to because of the inclusion of Daichi as an opposite hitter. So instead, I invested the most points I have for any of my starters into this position and picked the libero from Itachiyama Academy, Motoya Komori. Not much has been seen of Komori as of yet, but this inclusion is more of a resume pick than anything else. He is playing at the top-ranked school in the country and was selected to attend the All Japan training camp alongside his teammate Kiyomi Sakuza. So it's a pretty safe assumption that he is a top-tier athlete and libero. We saw brief clips of him playing at the training camp in Season 4 and he looked right at home next to the best players in Japan. So that's the lineup. I've got Akashi at setter. The wing spikers are Daichi, Maki and Takeru, with Takeru as the ace. Middle blockers are Aone and Taichi, and rounding out my team I have Komori as the libero. As for the bench, with only 5 points to fill out 3 spots, it was always going to be tough. For the rules on selecting the bench, you can check out the previous video or find them in the player list below. So for my main piece coming off the bench, I wanted someone who could make a big impact. So I selected the biggest player on the board. From Kakogawa High, Yudai Hyakuzawa. The dude is over 6'7" in height. That's massive, and his height made him a real problem for Karasuno when they faced off against each other, although they did eventually figure him out. Coming off the bench, I'm not expecting too much from him. If I can bring him on to shake things up for maybe 10 to 15 plays a game, with that massive size, he could cause chaos in the opposing team, and that's exactly what I want from him. Unlike Kakogawa, I won't be overly relying on him, and in a limited role, I think he could be a real powerhouse from the bench. Also, during Season 4, after some difficulties early on, he started to make real progress at training camp, and overall his prospects are looking up. That's why I have bumped up his value on this updated list. As for the other 2 spots, just like the previous video, I'm going back to the Karasuno well once more and picking up Narita and Kinoshita. Narita always holds it down when he comes on, and I expect he could do the same with this squad in limited minutes. Solid all-round player, if not special. As for Kinoshita, he is the only returning player from the previous video, and in that video I designated him as a warm body who would never really hope to see the court. However, as Season 4 progressed, I was really happy to see that he was developing quite a bit as a pinch server and actually got to contribute to the team outside of just moral support. So I figure he can provide some of that pinch serving here for this team, as serves aren't our strongest suit. And there it is, my best attempt at putting together a team on hard mode that could compete with the powerhouses of the Miyagi Prefecture and hopefully win. Therefore moving on to nationals and taking some wins there too. Let me know what you think of the team. Would they fare well? Also, be sure to make your own team and drop it in the comments below. I noticed in the previous video, many of the teams in the comments far surpassed my own. If there is enough interest, I will continue to update the list at the end of Season 4. If you like the video, be sure to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you would share this video with others, that would be great too. Also, make sure to check out the podcast. Links are in the description below. Until next time, bye bye, love you, bye.